So we begin this series of uncovering Shabbat, and today we start with, first I want to just explain how I'm looking to structure this class. We're basically going to have maybe break it up into three. One, a general introduction on Shabbat. Number two, some practical elements of observing Shabbat, and then maybe a story for Shabbat. So that's what we're going to do. So first we'll start with the general introduction of the meaning of Shabbat. So the best way to start is, what could be a better way than actually using the words of our prophet Isaiah. Says the following: if you restrain your foot because of the Sabbath from performing your affairs on my holy day, and you could call the Shabbat a delight, the holy of the Lord honored, and you honor it by not doing your wanted ways, by not pursuing your affairs and speaking words, then Hashem will honor you. This is already, I'm saying, the continuation. But basically, already the prophet Isaiah talks about how much one needs to honor Shabbat. So, already in the Torah tells us that Shamor and Zachor, you should honor the Shabbat. Why? Because God created the world in 6 days, and on the seventh day He rested. And in fact, Shabbat is so important that is, as we know, mentioned in the Ten Commandments. Because Shabbat is the foundation, expresses the foundation of our faith and our belief. Because as human beings, we might tend to think that it's all what we do that brings us the mazel and the blessing in our workspace and in everything else. Comes Shabbat, and when we remember that it's Hashem, we publicly declared that it's God that created the world. 6 days, and on Shabbos He rested. It's saying to us that it's a lot more than just what we do, obviously. And Shabbat is not just, again, about having a day of rest. I think, I'm trying to remember who was it who said, there was I forgot who said this, actually a non-Jewish historian said, if the only thing the Jews gave us is the Shabbat, the one day of rest, we already have to be thankful to them for just that one thing. Because, as we know, Shabbat is so important. Now, I often, we have people for Shabbat, and I often get the argument that, Rabbi, Shabbat was maybe necessary 100 years ago, 200 years ago, where to make a living you had to chop wood, but today things are different. And the answer is totally the other way around. We know this. Let's talk for a moment from a simple psychological level. But Shabbos is a lot more than that. But just getting back to the psychological level. Psychologically, a human being needs the rest, needs to rewind, needs downtime. In fact, I not that long ago, and I'm not good with remembering names, heard a psychologist mention, this was on TED Talks, that one of the problems with phone and technology is not just that we're always connected with work, and there's never disconnect from work. Our brain is never disconnected, and the creativity that is needed for us to come up with new ideas, new thoughts, is when the brain has downtime. When the brain has downtime, that's when these ideas come into our head. And we live in a day today that there is no downtime. People say they go on vacation, but they're not on vacation. They're just switching their workspace from one place to another place. So therefore Shabbat, when we just turn everything off, that's in terms of Zachor. There are two elements to Shabbat. And this, Shabbat we find in the Ten Commandments, both in Parshat Yitro, in Exodus, and also in V'etchanan in Deuteronomy. In one place it says, Zachor, you should remember the Shabbos. And in another place, the same verse says, Shamor et Yom Shabbat, you should guard the Shabbat. And our sages learned from this that there are two elements to the Shabbat. There is the negative, meaning negative here in a sense, the things that you should refrain from, and there's the positive. Shamor means guard, means what you should refrain from. Zachor means what you should get involved and be involved in. So Shabbat has those two elements. There's many, many laws that are there to assure, to allow us to sort of disconnect from the world around us, to tear ourselves away so we could have true rest. And then there's the positive mitzvahs of Shabbos, which is not just not doing something, but what we do. So there's two elements to the Shabbat. Again, Zachor and Shamor. And again, this is a short class. It's going to be, it's not an elaborate class. So there's limit to what we could share over here. But this aspect that Shabbat is total time to tear away from everything is so helpful, and it is what has maintained the Jewish people throughout history. I want to read here a quote from Senator Lieberman. We all know who Senator Lieberman is. Senator Lieberman said the following. See, he writes in his book, he wrote a book on Shabbos, and it's called The Gift of Rest. And he writes like this. He says, in our harried and meaning-starved culture, the Shabbos cries out to be rediscovered and enjoyed. And then he says the following line, which is a beautiful line. He eloquently adds that the purpose of the day is not, as one may think, to recharge our battery so that we can work better, but instead, listen to this quote, to recharge our soul so that we can live better. Verstehst, as we say in Yiddish. By the time we finish this class, you probably will learn a couple of Yiddish words as well. So the Shabbat, the Sabbath, is there not just so we could recharge and Sunday we could go back to work. In fact, I want to point out a difference between the Jewish names of the days of the week versus the secular. The secular, each day has a name, and often it's connected to either idols or some other worship of the early pagans. Sunday was because of worship of the sun, and Monday, etc. In Judaism, if you notice, the only day that has a name is Shabbat. In Judaism, the Sunday is called Yom Rishon, first day. Monday called Yom Sheni, the second day. Tuesday, third day, etc. Because it's all days that we prepare for Shabbat. Shabbat has a name because everything is centered around Shabbat. There is discussion about this, but we'll stay with this for now. And in fact, the Talmud talks about, and it's brought down in Jewish law, that Beit Shammai, one of the two earliest sages in the days of the Talmud was Shammai and Hillel. And the Talmud tells us that Shammai, the entire week, would remember Shabbat. How so? That if he found we'll use the terms of today. If he found a good, delicious dish, in Yiddish we say a geschmack, zafteke dish, on Sunday he would leave it. He would say, "This I'm going to save for Shabbos." If he found something nicer on Monday, he says, "Oh, I'm going to save this for Shabbos." In other words, the entire week he lived for Shabbat. How so, or why so? Because Shabbat is not just about refraining from work. Shabbat is about connecting. Shabbat is about connecting to something greater than ourselves. Shabbat is about realizing that Sheishet Yamim Asa Hashem et Hashemayim v'et haaretz, that for 6 days God made the heavens and the earth, and God created us, and we have a higher purpose. There's meaning to life. It's not just about self-gratification. Shabbos, I can even talk for myself, since we're here on Facebook amongst friends. As a rabbi, my job is to teach Judaism. My job is to bring the beautiful meaning and tradition of Torah to the community, to the broader community, etc. But I can tell you like this, that being connected with my phone, which is a necessity because there's emergencies, whatever the reasons are, and constant messages. So even when I sit down to learn, and I learned every single day I sit down to study Torah, my mind is not at ease because there's just this pull that if any emergency comes through or urgent message, whatever it might be. I'm not saying it has to be that way, but that's just the reality. Shabbat is a time where I could really connect. Nothing else exists other than, yes, for a rabbi, Shabbat, there's community service at the synagogue, etc. But nevertheless, when Shabbat afternoon or Shabbat morning, I sit down to learn, there's such a peacefulness, there's such a beauty, there's such a connection that comes on Shabbat. sitting with the family at the Shabbat dinner. So we want to talk. We'll talk about that. But this is a sort of a general introduction about the importance of Shabbat and the beauty. The Talmud says that God said, "I have this beautiful gift, and it's called Shabbat, and I'm giving it to my people." It's a special gift that God gave to us, and we should use it, utilize it, cherish it, and apply it. Now, I said the first part of the class is about Shabbat. Then I want to I want to transition into a practical element or mitzvah or custom or whatever it is that we do on Shabbat. So let's spend a couple of minutes. I want to talk about a very, very important rabbinical mitzvah. It's not a biblical mitzvah, but a rabbinical mitzvah that we do as we usher in the Shabbat, and that is the lighting of Shabbat candles. And the lighting of Shabbat candles is the mitzvah that we do. Again, it's one of the 7 rabbinical mitzvahs which has been given to women. Although, I do want to make it clear that if there is no woman in the house or your wife is out of town for whatever reason, you are obligated, the man is obligated to light the Shabbat candles because it's a mitzvah on the home which was given to the woman. So again, I want to make that clear as we talk about some of the practicalities. The lighting of the Shabbat candles is a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful way to usher the Shabbat. The basic reason for the lighting of the Shabbat candles is for Shalom Bayit. What does Shalom Bayit mean? Shalom Bayit means peace in the home. There's nothing more important than peace in the home. I saw articles and even controversial articles that with all this quarantining at home, there's a lot more tension at home, there's a lot more abuse at home, there's a lot more strife at home. Shabbat. You light the Shabbos candles. It says the Shabbat candles has a way of bringing peace into the home, simply for various reasons, including the message of Shabbat, of the candle, which takes the physical oil or wax and produces this beautiful fire. It represents a fusion of opposites, fire being the most spiritual element, and oil or wax is part of the more materialistic element, and together they create this beautiful light, again representing the fusion of opposites. And it's usually the fusion of opposites that creates such beauty. Now, to get a little more detail and to also share one interesting thing, the basic mitzvah is to light one candle. There is a custom by many that you light 2 candles. Why 2 candles? As I said before, one corresponding to Zachor and the other corresponding to Shamor. Zachor means what you shouldn't do on Shabbat, what you should do on Shabbat. Shamor means what you shouldn't do. So we light 2 candles. There is the custom of many that they light multiple candles, meaning for every member of the household, they light a candle. So if you have 5 kindalach, you light 7 candles for Zachor v'Shamor. You light a candle for your husband and wife plus 5 kids. So it's actually, it actually ends up being more than that. It ends up being 8 candles. Am I calculating right? I hope I am. So I thank God I'm blessed with many kids. So I totally lost the calculation over here. But so that's why we light, and also because the candle, Torah or, it says Ner Mitzvah v'Torah or, Torah is compared to a candle. So there's this custom to light for every single child so that he should be blessed with growing up, to study Torah, to be connected to Torah. And on that note, I want to add, and I will have to continue this a little bit next week because I want to stick within a certain time limit, that that during the lighting of the Shabbat candles, and for details how to light the Shabbat candles, more detail, please go to our website, coralspringschabbat.org, and you can type in Shabbat candles, and there's a wizard of exactly how to light the Shabbat candles, the blessing that you say. We light the candles, we then we say the bracha after we light the candle, and then the woman, of the mother that lights the candles, is a very special moment. And whenever I have the opportunity, I'm there as my wife lights the candles, because she covers her eyes as she says the blessing and says a prayer for every single member of the family. A prayer coming from what we call in Yiddish, a Yiddish mama, a Jewish mother's true, beautiful heart. So that prayer is said there, and many stories of blessings and miracles that have occurred as a result of that very powerful moment right after the lighting of the Shabbat candles. I also have to caution you that it's very important to light the Shabbat candles before sundown, preferably 18 minutes before sundown. Once it's sundown, you are not allowed to light the Shabbos, as lighting the Shabbos candles, as lighting a candle on Shabbos is forbidden. So this is, and I want to conclude. I was going to share a story about Shabbat, but it's already getting a little too long. I also want to say this following, I think, 2 thoughts about Shabbat candles. Another reason for lighting 2 candles is because one corresponds to the husband and one corresponds to the wife. And let me explain. The word Neir in Hebrew is a nun and a resh. Nun resh is 250. In rabbinical Talmudic teachings, a man, different sort of limbs and sort of parts is 248, while a woman has 252. So together, if you add that up, it makes 500. So when you light 2 candles, again, Neir, Nun Resh, which means candle. Neir in Hebrew, the Nun is 50, the Resh is 200. 250 times 2 is 500. So the 2 candles correspond to the husband and wife, and as we said before, the main purpose of the candles is to bring peace in the home, and starting with the husband and wife, because there is nothing more important in a home than harmony and peace and love between husband and wife. That's the foundation of a home. There's nothing more important for the kinderlach, for the children, to have a home where mother and father are on the same page. Doesn't mean they never disagree, but they're on the same page, and there's peace and harmony amongst them. So the 2 candles, the 2 beautiful candles of Shabbat, the Ner is the 248 plus 252, husband and wife, and that's how we get the 2 candles, and we get to 250. And in conclusion, that the Rebbe pointed out very strongly and emphatically, and had a campaign, that also Jewish girls before marriage, from age 3, should light Shabbat candles. It's a simple mitzvah. It adds to the beauty of the Shabbat candles when there's a little candle there that the girl has lit. This is some of the details of the Shabbat candles. I don't think I'm leaving anything out, but again, practically speaking, make sure to light a candle that should have enough time, 2-3 hours, that burns at least through the meal. You must light it before sunset. 18 minutes before Shabbat is when you really should be lit. You say the blessing. The blessing is Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam Asher Kiddishanu B'mitzvotav V'tzivanu Ladlik Ner Shel Shabbat Kodesh. If you look in our website, coralspringschabbat.org, you can get a wizard like a self-help web instructions that tells you exactly all the details. So this is our insight, our first class about Shabbat. It was a story about Shabbat that I wanted to share, but we're running out of time. So, God willing, next week, I'm not sure yet what we will talk about next week. Perhaps about challah, perhaps about wine, perhaps about gefilte fish. We'll see. But thank you very much for joining us. You should have a wonderful Shabbat. You do not have to be a religious, observant Jew to keep Shabbat. Shabbos is the best gift that God has given to us, especially in today's day and age, which is so hectic and difficult to disconnect. And it's not an all or nothing. Start with lighting Shabbat candles. Start with something. You might then decide, if I'm lighting Shabbat candles, I should also have a Shabbat meal. I'm not going to object to that. But it's, again, every single mitzvah, one at a time, one good deed is amazing. Shabbat Shalom. Thank you for joining us. You should have a wonderful and peaceful Shabbat. That's my daughter peeking her head. She's going to be lighting Shabbat candles very soon. Shabbat Shalom to everybody.